Joanna Duggar, a name that's been in the spotlight for years, has once again found herself at the center of public discussion. Recently, a seemingly innocuous post on her Instagram story has led to a flurry of fan comments and speculations. Fans believe that her simple tribute to her husband's mother, Austin Forsythe's mom, may have unintentionally stirred the pot with her own parents, Michelle and Jim Bob Duggar. Joanna, who gained fame as part of the Duggar family through the TLC reality show Counting On, is known for her relatively private life compared to some of her siblings. While other family members like Duggar and Jill Duggar have openly expressed their differing views and lifestyles post-show, Joanna has largely remained in the background. However, this recent post has made waves, as fans believe it could be indicative of deeper family tensions. On March 31st, Joanna Duggar shared a photo on her Instagram story that initially seemed harmless, a snapshot of her laptop as she worked on filing her taxes. However, what caught the attention of her followers wasn't the tax preparation itself, but rather what was visible in the background of the photo. In the image, Joanna had her laptop open on a wooden desk, and beside it was a photo of her husband's mother. The caption accompanying the photo read, "Shout out to my sweet mother-in-law, love her." The words were warm and kind, yet some fans couldn't help but wonder whether there was an underlying message. Joanna's parents, Michelle and Jim Bob Duggar, have been key figures in her upbringing and public life. As one of the 19 children raised by Jim Bob and Michelle, Joanna has often been portrayed as a dutiful daughter, following the family's strict guidelines and religious convictions. So, when fans saw her mention her mother-in-law so prominently, many began to speculate that it was a subtle jab at her own parents. To fully understand the reaction to Joanna's post, it's important to consider the complex dynamics of the Duggar family. Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar, the patriarch and matriarch of the family, have been known for their highly publicized and often controversial parenting style. They have raised their children with firm religious principles, emphasizing modesty, courtship, and submission to authority. Over the years, several of the Duggar children have distanced themselves from their parents' teachings in one way or another. For instance, Jill Duggar Dillard, one of Joanna's sisters, has been vocal about her struggles with the family's strict beliefs and her eventual decision to break away from some of their teachings. Similarly, Duggar Duggar Vuolo has publicly spoken about her more liberal views on modesty and religious practices. While Joanna has not been as outspoken as her sisters, her post hinted at a more subtle form of rebellion. The relationship between the Duggars and their in-laws has always been a subject of speculation, with many wondering how much influence the Forsythe family has on Joanna and her decisions. The idea of throwing family under the bus is one that has been frequently discussed in Duggar circles. Fans have observed that as the Duggar children grow older and start families of their own, they often begin to forge their own paths, sometimes diverging from the traditions and rules set by their parents. This shift is particularly noticeable when looking at the relationship dynamics between the older generation, Jim Bob and Michelle, and the younger generation, their adult children. Joanna's post could be seen as part of this ongoing evolution. In the world of social media, where every image and message is scrutinized, even the slightest gesture can be interpreted in multiple ways. Fans who follow Joanna closely are likely aware of her more private nature. She's typically not as active in the public eye as her siblings, so any public display of affection or attention to her in-laws was bound to raise eyebrows. Additionally, Joanna's post could reflect a growing loyalty to Austin Forsythe's family. Since her marriage to Austin in 2017, she has been seen as aligning more with his values and his upbringing. The Forsythes are a well-known family in their own right, and Austin's mother, in particular, has had a significant influence on Joanna's life. It's possible that the post was meant to acknowledge that influence and show gratitude toward her mother-in-law. While some fans saw the Instagram story as a harmless, loving gesture, others took a more cynical view. Many of Joanna's followers on social media are deeply invested in the Duggar family's journey and have long scrutinized the relationships between family members. When they saw the mention of Joanna's mother-in-law without a similar shout-out to her parents, some fans felt that she was subtly distancing herself from her own family. One user commented on a fan forum, It just feels like she's trying to signal something, especially given the history of tension within the family. I don't know. It's just strange that she posted about her MIL and not her own mom. Another fan wrote, "I think it's great that she's showing appreciation for her mother-in-law, but it's hard not to wonder if there's some deeper meaning behind it." We know Joanna isn't as outspoken as some of her siblings, but this could be her way of quietly signaling that she's more aligned with Austin's family. On the flip side, there were fans who defended Joanna, insisting that it was just a simple, affectionate post. People are reading way too much into this. She's just being nice to her mother-in-law. There's no need to make it a big deal, one commenter said. It's no secret that there have been tensions within the Duggar family over the years. While the Duggars have maintained a united front on television, there have been behind-the-scenes reports of disagreements, differing opinions, and struggles within the family. One notable instance of tension occurred when Jill Duggar Dillard and her husband, Derek Dillard, chose to step away from the Duggar family's ministry and lifestyle. Their departure caused a stir in the Duggar community, as it highlighted the deep divides that were starting to form within the family. Jill and Derek have been particularly vocal about the control that Jim Bob Duggar has over the family's finances and decision-making, with Jill claiming that Jim Bob has not been forthcoming with the family's money. Jinger Duggar Vuolo has also been open about her desire to lead a more independent life and make decisions that align with her own beliefs. These public displays of independence have led some fans to wonder if Joanna will eventually follow suit. Joanna's recent actions seem to reflect a more private and reserved approach compared to some of her siblings. While she used to be more involved in family events and public activities, in recent years, she has taken a step back, focusing more on her family with Austin. This shift could be a sign of her desire to live a more low-key life, free from the pressures and expectations of public scrutiny. However, Joanna's post could also signal that she's beginning to carve out her own identity within her marriage and her relationship with the Forsyth family. It's not uncommon for people to evolve in their relationships, and Joanna may simply be growing closer to her in-laws as she builds a life with Austin. The future of Joanna Duggar's relationship with her family and her public persona remains uncertain. With the increasing distance between her and her parents' traditional lifestyle, fans will continue to watch closely for signs of change. The dynamics within the Duggar family are ever-evolving, and as Joanna raises her own children, it's likely that she will continue to shape her beliefs and practices in ways that differ from her parents. While some fans may view her Instagram post as a sign of rebellion or distancing from her parents, it's equally possible that it was a simple expression of love for her mother-in-law. The key takeaway from this situation is the complexity of family relationships, particularly within the Duggar family, where personal beliefs, social media, and public life intersect in often unpredictable ways. In the end, Joanna Duggar's recent photo may not be a dramatic statement of defiance, but rather a reflection of the changes and choices she is making as an individual. Whether this means distancing herself from her family or simply appreciating her in-laws, the public will continue to speculate as they watch Joanna navigate her life beyond the spotlight of Counting On. In 2008, TLC viewers were introduced to a family unlike anything else on television, Michelle and Jim Bob Duggar and their then 17 children in 17 kids and counting. As the show gained popularity, and as the family continued to grow, it evolved into 18 kids and counting, and eventually 19 kids and counting. The premise was simple, yet fascinating. A deeply religious family raising their children with unwavering devotion to their Christian values, complete with strict rules on dating, dress codes, gender roles, homeschooling, and most notably, their belief that children are a blessing from God, to be welcomed without limitation. Fast forward to today, and the Duggar legacy has moved from its original nuclear form to something resembling a full-blown dynasty. As of 2025, Jim Bob and Michelle have more grandchildren than they had children, over 30 grandkids and counting. The family tree has begun to branch out rapidly, and a new generation of Duggars is being born into a world that looks very different than the one their parents grew up in. With each passing year, baby announcements, gender reveals, and first birthdays flood social media, especially Instagram and YouTube. Many of Jim Bob and Michelle's adult children, particularly Jessa, Joanna, Joseph and Kendra, have started families of their own, some with multiple children already. In the span of just over a decade, the Duggar name has expanded into dozens of households, all carrying some trace of the values instilled in them during their youth, some clinging to those teachings, others rejecting them entirely. The family's cultural impact continues to ripple through conversations about faith, family size, fundamentalism, and fame. After the cancellation of Counting On in 2021, due in part to the legal troubles of Josh Duggar, many assumed the Duggar narrative might fade from view. Instead, the children of the Duggars have taken up the mantle, sometimes reluctantly, other times enthusiastically, sharing glimpses into their homes, lives, and parenting approaches. This shift raises compelling questions. What happens when the children raised in an insular, faith-based world begin having children of their own? Will they carry forward the doctrines of the Institute in Basic Life Principles, IBLP, or will they seek a new path? And what will the next generation of Duggars grow up believing, becoming, and building? In this article, we'll explore the current count and identities of Jim, Bob, and Michelle's grandchildren, dig into how their children are raising the next generation, examine how the family's belief system continues, or doesn't, and ask what it really means to be a Duggar in the modern era. The growth of the Duggar family isn't just a biological marvel, it's the result of a deeply rooted ideology. Central to understanding why the Duggars have so many children and now grandchildren is the family's affiliation with the Institute in Basic Life Principles, IBLP, and the broader Quiverful movement. Founded by Bill Gothard, IBLP promotes ultra-conservative Christian teachings focused on obedience, hierarchy, modesty, and complete surrender to God's authority. Although Gothard resigned in 2014 following multiple allegations of sexual misconduct, his teachings had already taken deep root in families like the Duggars. For Michelle and Jim Bob, the IBLP framework wasn't just a guide, it was a rulebook. They homeschooled all 19 of their children using IBLP-endorsed materials. The girls wore long skirts and avoided public school or college. The boys were taught to be leaders and protectors. They were taught courtship instead of dating, always supervised, always chaste until marriage. Within that context, having as many children as possible was seen as a spiritual duty. They embraced the Quiverful ideology, which interprets Psalm 127 verses 3-5. Children are a heritage from the Lord. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them, as a literal call to reject birth control and allow God to determine family size. Jim, Bob, and Michelle have spoken openly about their decision to forego contraception after the birth of their first child, and how a miscarriage they believed was caused by birth control cemented their conviction. From there, they left family planning up to faith. This ideology shaped everything, from the show's branding to how the family approached discipline, education, marriage, and even media consumption. The question now becomes, how much of this belief system has carried into the next generation? Some of the Duggar children have adopted similar philosophies. Jessa Seawald, for instance, is raising 4 young children with her husband Ben, following similar modesty codes and faith-based education. Joanna Forsyth also appears to continue many Duggar values with her growing brood. Others, like Jill Duggar Dillard, have chosen to walk a different path entirely. In recent years, Jill has openly discussed breaking away from her family's belief system. In her memoir, Counting the Cost, Jill shares how therapy, boundaries, and a new understanding of faith have reshaped her parenting and her life. She and her husband Derek now make their own rules, including sending their son to public school and practicing a more moderate form of Christianity. Still others, like Jinger Vuolo, have gone even further in challenging the ideology they were raised in. In her own memoir, Becoming Free Indeed, Jinger called IBLP a harmful cult-like environment and discussed how fear-based religion affected her mental health. Yet she continues to hold strong personal Christian beliefs, separate from the ones she was raised with. As this philosophical divide widens, so too does the spectrum of parenting styles among the Duggar grandchildren. Some are being raised in environments that mirror their grandparents, while others are growing up in homes where once taboo subjects, therapy, boundaries, personal freedom, are embraced. In the heart of Northwest Arkansas, a real estate transaction has captured attention far beyond the borders of Town. Jim Bob Duggar, the famously frugal and deeply religious father of the sprawling Duggar family, who rose to fame through the TLC reality show 19 Kids and Counting, has just made a staggering $5 million profit through a single land deal with Walmart. The transaction is straightforward on the surface. Walmart purchased slightly over 16 acres of land on West Henry, Delaware, Tonti Road for $4.7 million. Duggar and his wife Michelle originally bought the property for around $600,000. The massive return on investment isn't just financially impressive, it's symbolic of Jim Bob Duggar's quiet but steady efforts to build a real estate empire outside of his reality TV fame. But this isn't just a business story. The timing of the deal, the name behind it, and the public's reaction are wrapped in a larger, more complex narrative, one that involves religion, media, scandal, and shifting American values. Over the past decade, the Duggar family has transformed in the public eye. Once embraced as a wholesome, God-fearing clan embodying traditional Christian family values, they are now more often associated with secrecy, control, and controversy. Following a series of damaging revelations involving the family's eldest son, Josh Duggar, including molestation accusations and, more recently, a federal conviction for possession of child pornography, public sentiment toward the family has shifted dramatically. Many of the Duggar children, now adults, have begun speaking out against the rigid upbringing they experienced, revealing behind-the-scenes details that starkly contrast the family's once curated image. This Walmart land deal stands in sharp relief against that backdrop. While Jim Bob's public image has taken numerous hits, his business instincts appear intact. The man who spent years navigating the complicated terrain of fame, faith, and scandal has now maneuvered through another industry with remarkable success. Whether the deal is seen as redemption or just another chapter in a long and controversial saga, it raises a question that hovers over many public figures who fall from grace. Can financial triumph redefine a tarnished legacy? As we dig deeper into the deal, the family history, and the public response, it becomes clear that this land sale is not merely a transaction. It's a symbol of a man and a family at a crossroads. Jim Bob Duggar and his wife Michelle first stepped into the public eye in the early 2000s when their unusually large family began drawing national attention. What began with local news coverage soon evolved into a television special on Discovery Health and ultimately a full-fledged TLC reality show, 19 Kids and Counting. The show premiered in 2008 and followed the daily life of the Duggar family in Springdale, Arkansas. At the time, the appeal was obvious. Viewers were fascinated by the logistics of raising 19 children, the strict religious rules that govern the household, and the family's seemingly unwavering commitment to faith and frugality. The Duggars adhered to the teachings of the Institute in Basic Life Principles, IBLP, a conservative Christian organization led by controversial minister Bill Gothard. Through this religious lens, the Duggars embraced a patriarchal family structure, courtship over dating, modesty in clothing, and complete submission to authority, especially male authority. Jim Bob, a former Arkansas state legislator, was not only the head of the household but also the gatekeeper of the family's public image. Under his guidance, the Duggars built a brand around large family living and conservative Christian values. Speaking tours, books, endorsements, and television appearances followed. But that carefully crafted image began to unravel in 2015 when In Touch Weekly revealed that Jim Bob and Michelle had known for years that their eldest son Josh had molested several young girls, including his own sisters, as a teenager. The public backlash was swift and severe. TLC canceled 19 Kids and Counting, and the Duggars began a slow fall from mainstream grace. Josh Duggar's troubles didn't end there. In 2021, he was arrested and charged with receiving and possessing child sexual abuse material. In 2022, he was convicted and sentenced to over 12 years in federal prison. The case sent shockwaves through Duggar fandom and drew renewed scrutiny to the family's beliefs, behaviors, and behind-the-scenes dynamics. Several of the Duggar daughters, including Jill Duggar Dillard, Jinger Duggar Vuolo, and Joyanna Forsyth, have since spoken out against their upbringing. Jill, in particular, has been vocal in interviews and in her memoir, Counting the Cost, detailing how family loyalty was weaponized against her and how she and her husband Derek were financially and emotionally controlled by Jim Bob. As more members of the family distanced themselves from the patriarch, questions arose about Jim Bob's role in the scandals, not just as a father, but as the de facto manager of the family brand. Now, against that tumultuous history, Jim Bob's land sale to Walmart feels more than just financially significant. It's loaded with symbolism. How does a man, seemingly at the epicenter of a collapsing empire, walk away with a multi-million-dollar payday? And what does that say about wealth, power, and accountability in America?